I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Now, today we're reading from the book of Philippians, chapter 1. Let's focus on verses 29 and 30. For it has been given to you on the Messiah's behalf, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him, having the same struggle that you saw I had, and now hear about me. We read this and we say, hey, Paul, how are we supposed to convince sinners with that kind of theology? Struggling, suffering, you just don't understand the culture these days. And Paul's statement certainly raises some questions and some concerns as to what we should expect when we follow Jesus. You see, the problem of pain is perhaps the church's greatest dilemma moving ahead. Because we live in a culture of luxury, and ours is an I-centered world, complete with iTunes and iChat and even iChurch. I'm writing this podcast on an iBook. You see, the point being that our world seems to revolve around us and how we feel all the time. And you can tell our cultural narcissism by the complaints that we have about church services. Oh, well, the music was off today, or the preaching went long. The parking lot is just too crowded. Newsflash, God connects more deeply with us through hardship than through abundance. Now consider the September 11th tragedy of 2001. Remember how quickly that our nation in the focus shifted to God save us. You had Democrats and Republicans standing, right there in Washington together singing God Bless America. And then recall how soon folks abandoned the Lord once the immediate hardship and the perceived danger seemed to diminish. Some within the church believe that Christians never have problems as long as they are nice people and they live according to the golden rule, the Bible. And when such people observe your pain, well, then they say, well, it must be the result of some sin that you're involved in. Because any difficulty in their life, they would attribute to the sins of other people. And this so-called theology, and I say so-called because it's not theology at all, because it's negligent of Paul's teaching. It is heresy because Paul exhorted that suffering is a gift from the Lord. It is part of his grace toward us. Alongside the gift of salvation through faith in the Messiah, we also receive the gift of living in him. And that means suffering as he suffered. Consider the lives of Jesus and Paul and all the other apostles, all those early church leaders, and even those within the Reformation who were killed for their faith. Who wants to be beaten and stoned and shipwrecked or crucified? And yet they all considered it joy in light of the hope that was set before them. Hardship, folks, is inevitable. And also it is a privilege for believers. How so? Because it builds our faith. It brings us closer to the Lord because it makes us cry out to the Lord. And we get to experience his deliverance. You would never experience the deliverance of the Lord if you were never in a situation that you need to be delivered from. James chapter 1, verse 12, blessed is a man who endures trials, because when he passes the test, he will receive the crown of life that he, that is the Lord, has promised to those who love him. You see, we trust God initially because of the observable testimony of faithful believers. We see them under stress. We see them not cracking. We say, man, I need that in my life. And when we read the Bible, then we learn of God's holiness and his faithful interaction with mankind throughout history. And then this leads us to trust his leading in our lives. You see, he leads us through hardships where we learn the reality of his faithfulness as opposed to abstractly believing in a theory of his faithfulness. Thus, our faith and our boldness builds through difficult times. Observable faithfulness attracts unbelievers, and the whole process starts all over again. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Now, Groundworks Ministries operates entirely through financial donations from faithful people just like you. And yes, we need your monthly support. Donating is secure and it's easy at our website, groundworksministries.com. You know, another way to help is to tell people about Groundworks Ministries. You can share these podcasts with friends and family and on your social media. And of course, you can always direct folks to our website, groundworksministries.com.